Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida Fair Tax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, November 1st, 2024. Mark Cuban must know Kamala Harris better than she knows herself. That's the title of an October 25th, 2024 Wall Street Journal article. Here's some points made in that article. Mark Cuban, the wealthy businessman and TV celebrity, swears that Vice President Harris would never tax unrealized capital gains. Yet, Ms. Harris has endorsed a tax on wealth and shows no sign of having changed her mind. Now, they're both talking about the billionaire minimum tax, which would stretch the definition of income to include gains on unsold assets. Households worth more than $100 million would owe a minimum of 25% on their total annual income, including any increase in their overall wealth. The new tax would nullify the so-called step-up in basis for many of these households, too. That's a policy that eliminates the taxable gain of an asset when it's passed on to an heir. President Biden proposed this tax in his budget last year, and Ms. Harris endorsed it in August with a list of other tax increases. She confirmed this on the campaign trail recently, breaking her usual habit of avoiding specifics. I support a billionaire minimum tax and corporations paying their fair share, she told rallygoers last month in Northampton, New Hampshire. Mr. Cuban said, "Some people think there's going to be an unrealized gains tax on capital gains. There is not. There is not," he told the crowd. He said he went ballistic when he heard rumors of the billionaire minimum tax, calling it an economy killer. But he urged the crowd to relax because Kamala knows that. Yet, the Harris campaign said in a statement Wednesday that she still supports the tax, according to Bloomberg News. She also declined to say whether she'd distinguish her billionaire minimum tax in any way from the Biden version. This means this wealth tax is on the ballot on November 5th. For non-financial assets, disputes over valuation would be legion and would go on for years. Taxpayers might have to sell other assets to pay the tax, even though they have earned no actual financial income. The greatest risk is that lawmakers would gradually expand the pool of eligible taxpayers. Once the wealth tax is law, it won't be nearly as politically difficult to extend it to households under $100 million. These households hold a huge amount of aggregate wealth. Now, Mr. Cuban could endure the minimum tax, but it could cripple countless others. In conclusion, in the 1930s, after Hitler came to power in Germany, many German intellectuals and leading Jewish business people kept saying that Hitler was simply too intelligent to carry out the attacks that he promised in Mein Kampf. Many of them paid for their wrong assessment of him with their lives. Now, Mr. Cuban seems to be making the same mistake about the enactment of the wealth tax if Vice President Harris is elected. Now, fortunately, no one's going to pay for that wrong assessment with their lives, just with their money. Furthermore, most Americans are convinced that if the wealth tax is enacted, Ms. Harris and her allies will soon start lowering the amounts of income that would be subject to the tax. Ms. Harris and her allies genuinely believe that the money they collect would be used to create an America that's better for everyone, even though the majority of us who are providing that money may disagree. Now, this is just another example of how the D.C. elites and their minions in Congress use the income tax system to benefit themselves to the detriment of the rest of us. They also greatly value the power they derive from the income payroll tax system. They love the idea of being able to punish anyone who dares to oppose their agenda with higher taxes and IRS audits. Now, former President Trump is strongly suggesting that it's time to eliminate the income tax and return power to the people to determine the federal taxes they pay based on their consumption. Regardless of who's elected, though, there's no certainty they'll be able to push their proposals through Congress. However, this Tuesday we have the chance to choose between two candidates with markedly different tax policies. President Trump is signaling that he's ready to discard the income tax system in favor of a consumption tax. Vice President Harris, on the other hand, is signaling that she not only wants to keep the present income tax system, but expand it. So please be sure to vote, and vote wisely. The solution? Pass the fair tax. Why would D.C. pass the fair tax and give up an almost unlimited source of donations? Well, they won't, at least not voluntarily. The only way they will is if the rest of us demand it. Isn't it time to end this ludicrous tax collection system and the IRS along with it? Help us bring about real tax reform and stop future IRS abuses. By contributing or investing $10.40 a month, you help provide a financial base to Americans for fair taxation. Now, if you can make larger contributions/investments, these will be used not for salaries, as we're all volunteers, but for the needed updates to our economic studies, which will be vital for all future years. Please go to fairtax.org to invest in AFFT and help us pass the fair tax. It's an investment in your and your family's future.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at fairtax.org.